Hey, you beautiful being. It is Nina here, and you are officially listening to Empowered Human, wherever you get your podcasts. This podcast is definitely for people who are trying to show up and vibrantly exist as all that they are, not just the parts that make other people comfortable. So, if you are about vibrantly existing and, celebrating your humanity, this podcast is for you. So, let me tell you here, there is a big thing that we think in the empowered human community, and it is this: obligation is not liberation. And so, if you are trying to liberate your most vibrant human self as you listen in and join the empowered human community, obligation is something you really want to start looking into. And so, right now, I'm going to tell you, you are not obligated to listen to this episode. You're not. But if you consent to listening in and you choose to listen in, then here's what you are going to get from today. Today's special guest is Francisca Hernandez. She's in Houston, Texas. Hey, you all, it's where I'm at. And what you are going to lean into is not only the experience leading up to Francisca nearly bleeding to death in 2017, but you are also going to hear why that happened. And you're going to explore how she then moved forward to courageously exist, to heal herself. That's a really big part of this one, right? And learn how to reintegrate that narrative so she could really belong to herself. In this episode, we are really going to be leaning harming ourselves and harming others, and how we can shift that to really move forward, right? As our most, if that sounds like is your jam, then you're going to want to listen and grab a journal or a really good friend to dialogue with about what comes up for you in this episode, because for now I am curious, y'all. Are you ready to play? Welcome to Empowered Human, the dramatically playful podcast that invites you to heal humanity, the one within you, me, and the world at large. I'm your host, drama therapist, empowerment specialist, and not to mention empowered human, Nina Garcia, and I'm so stoked you're joining me on the journey. Every Wednesday, you are invited to explore transforming from powered to empowered with genuinely human stories of courageous existence, healing from invalidation, and truly belonging to you. So wherever you are in the spectrum, from empowerment curious to empowered human ambassador, this podcast is designed to humanize. Get ready to lean into your edge, heal your worldview, and finally belong to you. This is Empowered Human. Let's take a breath. Welcome to Empowered Human, Francisca Hernandez. How are you doing right now?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for having me on, Nina. This is great to be able to talk to you, especially with this empowered human take that you have going now. I really love it, and I'm happy to jump into talking about that.
Thank you so much. Yes, you are one of the first episodes, right, on the empowered human, transition that we've made. And it really was, about being able to focus on not just what we're triggered by, but how do we keep moving forward? How do we say, I want to vibrantly exist as the most fullest being that I can, and that means I've got to have the courage to show up as I'm designed, right? I've got to have the courage to heal the parts of me that have not been healed yet, that may be doing some damage to myself and others, right? And I've got to have the courage to own my truth so I can truly belong to myself, right? And so you reach out, and I'm like 100% what you're about to share, right, is so empowered human. And so it's an honor to be here with you. I'm ready for our audience to hear your story, right, as we launch into this new chapter. And I want to go ahead and start with our first question, which is, I want to know, if we were to invite you to locate yourself on your own individual culture island, right, what would be some of the thoughts or feelings or behaviors, identities, roles, right, whatever feels like it's present for you on your individual culture island? What would you share with us?
I love that you asked that question. It's such a beautiful soul-filled question.
Mm.
I would share with you that right now I'm in the phase of really accepting the transition that I embarked on about a year ago to open my studio, to become a full-time self-employed breathwork teacher, restorative yoga teacher, tarot reader, all of these things that I had been doing for a long time. I actually embarked on this journey long time ago, and I'm in the process of embodying that.
Mm,
I opened my studio March of 2022. I went full-time self-employed
congrats.
August 1st of last year.
Congrats.
And even doing that, you go through the motions and you don't really realize that you haven't actually embodied it, like fully become
Mm,
and fully accepted and said goodbye to those parts of you that are no longer valid, or no, not valid, but no longer part of who you are now, who you are representing. You're always valid, like you never change, like you just discover different perspectives, right? And so I'm in that phase of like, oh, these are perspectives that I've uncovered and discovered of myself, and all part of that journey of just falling in love with yourself over and over again. And sometimes we just have these blankets of protection on top of us. And I didn't realize that I had that until recently. And I'm like, wait a minute, I don't need to carry this officer manager blanket anymore. I don't need to carry this blanket of, the struggling, survivor anymore. Let's
ooh.
embody this thriving person that I am.
Yes, I love the image that you just offered us, Francisca. And when I think about the blanket of surviving, and you said the weight, I don't need to carry the weight of the survivor's blanket. So many of us are carrying the weight of the survivor's blanket. I had a human being who spoke with me once and they said, well, Nina, if I let it go, right? And they had a different metaphor for it, but they were like, if I let the weight of that go, then I won't be able to survive anymore. Like something will happen to me. And I was like, well, listen, the thing is, your body will actually never forget what you went through, but that it doesn't have to be the forefront in your hands, what you're focusing on, carrying with you to everything you go. We can empower you to let that go so you can choose when you pick it up and when you hold on to it, versus if you really say, you know what, I want this to be integrated into my story. I want this to be a part of my history, but not so much a part of my lived experience of the present. Like I'm ready to grow beyond it. So you have been through this
Yeah.
journey. You have worked through these different pieces, right? The identities that are on your eye, and the different roles that show up for how you exist in this world to move from surviving to thriving, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And, I so back in 2017, I almost bled to death. And if you would have known me back then, I was a completely different mindset. I didn't
Mhm.
understand what the purpose of anything was. I didn't know why we were here. I didn't know why I was here. I didn't feel like I had a purpose or anything had a purpose for that matter. But in the back of my mind, in the back of my heart, I always knew that love existed because I loved the people that I loved, and I loved the time that I got to spend with them. Even though the time that I got to spend with them, I was pretty much gone. I was doing all kinds of things that I don't do these days. Like I was drinking and doing all the stuff that, not caring about myself, numbing myself.
Mhm.
And throughout that journey, throughout the non-caring, I ended up realizing that the truth was is that if I didn't take care of myself, especially with almost dying, and getting pumped with 6 pints of blood, even after that, I was still drinking. I still wasn't grateful to be alive. And it
Oh
wasn't
my
until after I
gosh.
had surgery that I had time to sit and be and feel and think. And so here I am carrying this weight. Then I went and I learned breath work. And then last year, my mom died. And right before she died, I announced to my boss of 14 years that I was quitting. And it was like the next day, the next day I found that she was sick. I took care of her for 2 weeks. She died. And in
Oh
between all of
goodness.
this, here I am opening up a studio. Here I am like,
Going,
quitting a job
going,
that
going.
I've done for 14 years. And I didn't
Mhm.
realize that I'd been holding on to that.
Mm,
And yeah,
mhm.
this is the realization that I just came to just recently, actually, over the last few weeks. I'm like, wait, I'm still carrying this blanket. I'm still holding on to this blanket of survival. Grief is a long process. time gives you space, but it doesn't give you, like it never goes away is what I'm trying to say.
Grief.
And knowing that you have the space to grow around it, knowing that you have the space to really listen to what's going on. And here I am teaching people to do breath work and to breathe through their emotions and to rest in restorative yoga and to find clarity in tarot. And here I am teaching all these lessons and I'm not doing it myself. And I realized that,
Ooh,
and I was like, "Oh, you gotta do the work. You gotta do the work, Francisca.
you
You
gotta
gotta
do
let
the work.
go." Yeah, gotta do the work. And
Oh my
so,
gosh.
yeah,
Can
of
I ask a quick, I mean, we just, that is, I
course.
think, one of the best encapsulations I've ever heard of, like, here's my life in a nutshell. In 2017, right? Here's how I was feeling. And then you went into, right, we weren't living the life you wanted to live, right? You even bled out, you were still drinking, right? Then we ended up switching. There was so many of these big pieces. Can I go back and dig a little deeper into some of the layers here?
Yes,
When you
100%.
shared that it was 2017 the year? Did I get that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Mhm.
2017, and you said, you didn't really feel like things had a purpose, like you had a purpose. Did something happen in 2017 that made you feel that way, or had life up to that point just sort of led to this culmination in 2017?
What didn't happen? I mean, there was so many
Mm,
things, and I could argue for my limitations, which is what I was doing at the time. I was
mhm.
arguing for my limitations. I was saying, I had 2 abusive relationships that I had a hard time getting
Mm,
out of, long-term abusive relationships. I went to go see a therapist, and this therapist crossed some boundaries and actually got jailed for it, not because of me, but because he did it with other. Yes. And
got
so
it.
and then my dog died, and then I had a roommate who I found out was involved in some really heinous things. And, then my dog died. And, my dog dying, I feel like was a catalyst to push me a little bit deeper into doing drugs and into drinking because I was already drinking. I was already a recreational um coke user.
Okay.
I'd been a pothead since I was 12 years old. So and my dad died
Okay.
when I was 11, so it was just a lot of stuff,
Okay.
right? And I feel like it was a lifetime of stuff, and I was just
Yeah.
arguing for my limitations. I feel like it got really bad in 2015, and that's when, like, my dog died. Her name was Isabel, and, just kinda catapulted me into, like, a little bit of this further numbing,
Oh,
because I feel like
absolutely.
numbing was the thing that I
Mm.
always went to, right? And
It-
so I was sick. I had been sick for a while. Like I was having a hard time breathing. I was
Yeah.
having a hard time feeling anything. Like
Yep.
I could hear my heartbeat in my ear. I was sick. I knew I was sick. I thought it was because of all the drugs that I had done. But I was literally bleeding to death. Like I had to have a hysterectomy and get my uterus removed because I was bleeding to death.
What
And
what was
yeah,
the
so when you
cause of
ask
that? Sorry, just because, right, we've gone from this
fibroids,
fibro. Thank you. Oh my goodness. Okay, so there's
fibroids.
all
Yeah.
of this emotional turmoil going on in your life, which I think this is so important. I'm so grateful that you're sharing the layers of this, Francisca, because all of the emotional turmoil that we deal with on a general regular basis, right? Then we have these bigger things like emotionally abusive relationships, like loss of a parent figure, right? Like loss of a parent in your case, actually, right? Like loss of a loved creature, right? Our animals, our pets. And if it just keeps building up and we don't get the skills to learn how to process through it and cope with it effectively, right? To adaptively cope with it, what we end up having are lots of ways to maladaptively cope with it, and they just keep building on each other. So you're
Yeah.
sharing, right? It's not just one thing in this case, which is so true of the human experience. It's this diverse, multifaceted, hitting you from all sides, multiple layered, not just emotional, but psychological, right? All of those things. And then we have your physical body that starts to say, oh, we're going to throw something else into the mix here for
Mhm.
you, right? We're going to throw this
Mhm.
in. And so it's like we don't even pay attention to physically what's happening. Oh, I'll get there eventually. I'll get there eventually. And yet, what was the moment that your body, what did it shut down? What was the wake up call that helped save your life? I mean, almost
Yeah.
bleeding to death. What was, tell me about it. I'm here to listen.
Yeah. So, no, I love that you say that because it is compounded. I mean, we go through so much stuff in our lives, right? And we just keep going and going, especially the way that I was raised. So like my mom always said, pon las pies sobre la tierra, you know, like it's always, you know, get up, go, let's go. It's time to go, you know, get out of the
Mhm.
clouds, you know, get back to down to earth. And
Mhm.
so there's this mentality that I always had, you know, to be of use, to be the person
Mm.
who helps everybody. So there's a lot of codependency there too, which, you know, kind of is part of the abusive cycle of, you know, abusive relationships. At least it was for me. But the thing that kind of the day that I almost died, like
Yeah.
I was in my mind, I'm thinking, do I go to the hospital and
Yeah.
die there? Do I walk outside because I had my another dog that I was taking care of, and I was like, do I walk the dog outside and die outside? That way my family doesn't have to come to my house and see the mess that I'm living in, or do I go to work and die? Because my heart was beating in my ears. I could hear it. So this is something that I had in the background. Like
Mm.
I could barely walk 50 feet without getting winded because my hemoglobin and my blood levels were off. And that was normal for me at the time.
That was normal at the
But
time.
at the time, but because it was background noise, I was numbing so much and I was scared to go to the doctor and
Mhm.
get really, because I had already been to the doctor. I had been to the doctor in May of that year and they let
Mhm.
me go. But my hemoglobin at that point was at 5. You get a transfusion at 7 for women. Yeah. And they let
Mm.
me out of the emergency room, and I thought it was gallstones. And that's because that's what they told me. And I
That's what they
still went
believed.
from May to December
Yeah.
to got to a point 2, which which I should have been dead at that point, to be honest. They couldn't even read the blood levels. They had to get it sent to the to get to the labs to get tested. I
It
shouldn't
was
have
that
even been
wild.
walking. I shouldn't have been
Oh
able to
my
walk the
gosh.
dog. But that morning, I knew
Mhm.
something was really, really bad because I started seeing black, not black spots, just black.
Yeah.
And so I could barely get up to even take a shower. I don't even remember, to be honest with you, if that morning before I went to the hospital, if I actually took a shower. And I was so
Yeah.
embarrassed. I was so embarrassed when the doctor was like, at the emergency room, he's like, this is fibroids. And I was like, what are you talking about? How could it be fibroids? I thought that this was because I'd been doing coke. I thought this is my heart crapping out on me, but it wasn't. And
Gosh.
there I am sitting in the hospital, so embarrassed. Yeah,
Even as you say that, Francisca, I think about like I'm going to say the character of you, but I don't mean that in the way of it's not real. I mean who you were at that time, right? That part of you, right? How you were expressing yourself. What I just heard was even she was like, oh, I thought it was the cocaine. I thought it was the other things I were doing that were slowly taking me out of the world, but surely. And I was okay with that. I thought that's what it was to some degree. But not,
yeah,
oh, but this? And still she was worried about the way that things looked. Oh my God, did I take a shower yesterday? It,
yeah,
the amount of
yeah.
story that we tell ourselves we should be worried about instead of in your lived reality, your body was struggling to keep you alive. Oh my gosh.
Exactly, exactly. And
Yeah.
looking back at it, you know,
Yeah.
I can see that story that I was telling, like, where do I die? Like, where do I die? Because I don't want my family to come find me in my house. That's a mess, you know. Here you are keeping up these appearances. Here you are, you know, showing the world who you are, who you aren't, and you're lying. You're lying to yourself, you're
Mm.
lying to everybody. You're numbing so bad that you don't even know that that's what you're doing. Because I was highly functional. Like
Yep.
I had a job. I had a job for 14 years. I was responsible for other people as an office manager. I
Yes.
was responsible for keeping an office running smoothly.
Yes.
And I did it. And I did it. And so this high and there's so many people that are out there. And so
Doing the same
going
thing. Yep.
yeah, I'm doing the same thing.
Yep.
And here I am years later doing it in a different way. We all have our
Mm.
things, right? We all have our things that
Mm.
sometimes we revisit, sometimes we go back and we're like,
Mhm.
"Oh, I'm doing that thing again." But here
Mhm.
it is in a different way.
It's
Here it is in a
expressing
different
itself
perspective.
differently. Yep. It's
Yeah.
expressing
Yep.
itself differently.
Mhm.
Audience, I hope y'all are taking notes on this and applying it to your own stuff. Oh my gosh. Okay. So you get to this doctor, the doctor tells you what this actually is. And where was the next point of this wake up call for you? Was this like, oh, okay, I'll just keep believing in the story. I'll just keep up the performance. What ended up happening?
Oh no. Oh no. Like after the blood transfusion, I'm like, well, before the blood transfusion, I had actually stopped doing cocaine. Like I'd stopped doing November of that year.
Okay.
And then December, I had the blood transfusion and then I had to get a surgery in February. But after December, I'm like, I don't want to drink this much anymore. So still drinking, but not the way that I was doing it before.
You're changing your
Um,
relationship with it as well.
mhm,
Okay, gold.
right.
All right.
Right. And I had already been listening to spiritual things. Like I'd been listening to Louise Hay and I'd been listening to Dr. Joe Dispenza and I'd been listening to Brene Brown. And so I'd been listening to people. I've been having it in the background. Like I was trying to
Mhm.
figure it out. I'm like, they say that you can shift your reality. They say that you can shift how you feel. And
Mhm.
here I am trying to do it. I was actually meditating in 2015. So I'd started meditating after my dog died, mind you,
Yeah.
but I was meditating to stop, to get down from being high. I was meditating to get myself into a different place. So
Okay.
you can be, so after my surgery, I had a lot of time to sit, feel, and be, and mostly just feel.
Yes.
Because I've been numbing so much and things. I was looking into coaching. I was looking into lots of stuff, but I wasn't ready yet. But it wasn't until I started, I had to stay home for 4 weeks because I couldn't move after the hysterectomy. Like you can't get up.
Yeah.
Like you weren't even, I wasn't even supposed to go back to work for 6 weeks. And I was like, no, I need to go back in 4. Um, so
So we still
yeah,
have that
so
narrative running, right? That conditioned narrative of
still
go,
had
go,
it.
go, do, do, do. This is what makes you like solid as a person. If you don't do it, then shame on you, right? Like that narrative, that shaming narrative, really, to keep you in line.
Yeah.
Ooh. Okay. So 4 weeks you tell
Mm-hmm.
yourself they recommend 6, but
100%.
you're gonna do it in 4. Okay.
Yeah. And so there I am, like my family showing up for me, my friends showing up for me, helping me with the dog, helping me with all of the things that I had to do. Because at that point I was taking care of my niece's dog. She was in the Air Force and I was taking care of her dog. And
Yeah.
so, I had family come in and help me and I couldn't do anything. There wasn't stuff for me to do. And so the only thing I could do was feel and explore this world inside of me, explore all of these feelings. And what happened was it took that for all of this stuff that I had been taking in to really settle in. All this listening to how you can really shift your reality, how you can really listen to your body, how you can really listen to your soul. And
Mhm.
so I was listening, my soul was speaking, and it's like,
Mhm.
this is not the way you want to live. You don't want to be an office manager for the rest of your life. You know that there's something more.
Mhm.
And so the first thing I did was I took a Reiki class. And when I had my Reiki attunement, it was like a lift had happened in my heart. Like there was this weight on my heart that had lifted, and I was like, oh, wow, this stuff works. So
Yeah.
then I learned that. And then I found the mindfulness based stress reduction course by
Yeah.
Palouse Mindfulness, which is a free MBSR course. And so I learned mindfulness. I'm like, oh, okay, now I don't think I need to smoke pot anymore. In between that time, I signed up for coaching, career coaching, which I thought was career coaching. It was really life coaching. And my coach
Mhm.
realized early on that we have this theme going on with intuition. And my whole life, we're all intuitive, right?
I would
My whole
agree with you.
life, I'd been stifling, yeah, I've been stifling my intuition because
I
it
don't think
doesn't make logical sense.
And I don't
And
think we're taught that that's
right,
okay even, right? I really even with everything that you're sharing there too, I
right,
just want to reflect back. It's like you were immersing yourself in this healing culture of here's what you can do. You can, right? You can Reiki, you can breathe, you can get back to your intuition. You can, dare I say it, listen to your body and give yourself what you actually need, right? You were immersing yourself in a culture right? With media, with different forms of media and what you were listening to, what you were reading, so that you had the tools to be able to see your life differently, to show up differently in your life. I mean, this is the kind of courageous work that it takes when we think about what does it take to really show up as your most vibrant self. It is work, and yet, right, it looks so different from everyone, from person to person. It's work, but oh my gosh, the amount of pleasure and gold that can be brought from being able to do that work so that you can really show up as vibrantly as you can. Okay. Whew. So here you are doing the work, finding the Reiki, getting back to your intuitive self and listening in, and you can finally hear yourself. And it's saying, right, you're saying to you, this isn't how we want to show up. This isn't our, that wasn't our story, but this can be our story, right? This next step can be what you get to choose intentionally. What ended up happening?
So when I chose what I wanted to do intentionally for myself, I really was able to listen to what my soul really wanted.
Mm.
My soul did not want to do things for other people unless it felt right to me. Started creating boundaries. That was really hard. I think that a lot of people don't hear and don't know that when you start healing and when you start creating these boundaries, it
Mhm.
can be really lonely.
Oh my
And
gosh,
you
yes.
would be surprised by who is willing to stick by your side
Mhm.
and who is willing to keep you sick.
Oh my gosh,
You
can you
know,
just say that again?
yeah, yeah, because we will be surprised by the people who want to keep us sick because it's a mirror. It's a mirror. And unfortunately, not everybody's willing to go there with you. And not everybody is willing to get well with you.
Not everyone
And
has
that's
the
okay.
capacity for that
It's,
journey right now. Yep. It has to be
yeah,
okay, right? Or
they're
else
not
we spend
willing.
that time trying to pull them in and pull them along with us. It has to be okay to say, you're not there with me, but I need to keep moving.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And I love that you said that because not everybody has the capacity at that time. And
Yeah.
it's so true. And, some people may never have the capacity.
Oh
But
my
guess what? It's
gosh,
not your
yes.
responsibility.
It's
It
not
is
your
not your responsibility.
responsibility. Mm-mm, mm-mm,
Not at all. It can't,
mm,
you can't force somebody's hand
mhm.
because here's the thing that I realized.
Over
Some
to
of
you.
us are hard-headed and I'm hard-headed. And I needed to experience what I experienced
Mhm.
so that I could get to where I'm at now. And who am I to take this experience away from someone? I have no idea what is on their path. And, I'm going to get a little bit spiritual here with you too, because that day that I almost died,
Yeah.
I went to the hospital and I drove myself to the hospital between these blackouts that I was having. Um, I was going to leave the hospital
Yes.
and I swear that something turned my head to the side and found a parking spot that was so close to the elevator because my thought was, how can I walk into the emergency room?
Mm, mm,
So if there's guardian angels or whatever it is, spirit, the universe, God, whatever it is, all that it is, whatever it is that you call it, your higher power, your future self, whatever it is that you call it, watching out for me, then that means that everybody has that too. I'm not special. I'm not any
mm,
different than anybody else.
mm.
We all have our own unique way of healing, and we all have our own unique way of listening. Mine was I had to experience it. Who am I to take that experience away from someone else? Not everybody has the capacity at this moment, and not everybody can listen the way I can listen.
Mhm,
It's
mhm.
not my responsibility. And it,
I know we're nearing the end of the episode, and you were really sharing on the reality that it is not our responsibility to make decisions for other people, to try to pull them along, to try to get them to understand where we're at. Like, that's not our responsibility. And I think this is so critically important when we think about the empowerment journey in general that people will have, the realization that there is a difference between holding yourself responsible, because that's the only thing you can do. You can't hold anyone else responsible. What you can do is invite them to be accountable for what they are responsible for, which is their own thoughts and feelings, behaviors, right? I
Yeah.
can only be responsible for my thoughts and feelings, behaviors. I can't be responsible for yours. So if I'm ready to move forward in my healing journey and you're not, I can't be responsible for your stuff. What I can say is, here's my boundary, which you said was so important to set right. Here's my boundary, and I'm asking you to be accountable for my boundary. But you have to decide if you're going to do that. I can't be responsible for your stuff. I can only say, this is my boundary and I'm going to hold it, right? And how important it is for people to recognize that. I would even say a part of that, like you said, codependency earlier, right? And a part of that, like, I've got to constantly pull everyone along. I would say that's a bit of that savior role, right? That I think is even maybe
Yeah.
steeped in, we won't get into supremacy things and things of this nature, but like that, I've got to save, I've got to save. You don't got to save. If you could just take care of
No.
yourself, that may ripple out and help somebody else as a witness to your experience, right? But we can't be responsible for those other people. So that's what you were sharing. And I'm going to stop talking. I want to roll it over to you. Is there anything else you want to share before we move into the takeaways of this episode?
Yeah. I would say listen to what your body has to say to you. Listen to what your heart has to say to you. There's
Mm.
so many ways to do it. There's so many ways to do it. There isn't just one way.
Mhm.
Yeah, I teach breath work. Of course, I want people to do breath work, but guess what? It's not for everybody. Not everybody can
Oh,
go
you mean
there,
there's
especially with
multiple ways to heal?
so many. You are a unique being. We all have our own unique way of healing. After doing hundreds of breath work and Reiki and
Yes.
restorative yoga and chakra balancing workshops, I found that there isn't a cookie cutter way to heal. You are the only person who is going to be the authority on how you can heal. By healing yourself, you
Mm.
may just heal some relationships. I healed my relationship with my mom a couple of years before she died, and I'm so fucking grateful for that because I was there with her for her last breaths and I was able to be present. Like I stayed there. Like I wanted to leave and my body wanted to disassociate, my mind wanted to disassociate, but it's like, no, stay here, be with her in her last
You
breaths.
showed
You
up.
never know what your healing
You showed
is
up.
going to do for you. You just never know. And it's
Mm.
your only responsibility is to find what feels right for you and follow the thread and heal. Just heal. By healing yourself, you just never know how it folds over to other people and how other people can view that and how they can take strength from what you're doing. It's not your job to give people strength. It's their job to take their own strength, figure their stuff out. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for just sharing this little bit again at the end, because I already know we could do a whole nother episode on the healing of our relationships with our parents, in particular our mothers often, right? And this line that you shared, right, that healing is not cookie cutter. I get that I'm a therapist. A lot of people expect that I'm going to say, go to therapy, go to healing is an individualized path. It's an individualized. Some people it must be breath work. For other people, it must be Reiki. For other people, it must be right. And for some people, it's a little bit of all of these things, right? For
Yeah.
most of us, it's a collective, right, of different experiences that allow us to, because I have used it and I love this in the healing community in general, following the thread. Show up
Mm,
for yourself and follow that thread right on through. Francisca, thank
yeah.
you so much for sharing. Of course, before we part ways, two more things. Here's the first one, our takeaways, right? We've been together for the better part of the last half an hour, right? And I really want us both to be able to share, is there that we are taking, as we set out to transform, right, hard conversations into teachable moments around human identity? Is there something in particular that you would say, you know what, Nina, this is really what I would want to highlight and take with me, out the door, so to speak, and put this on into my life? Is there something that you would want to share, or should I go first?
Want to say that listening to your
Mhm.
heart is going to be the most important thing that you can do for yourself. And if you don't know how to listen to your heart, just place a hand over your heart. Just sit there and be and let it happen and see what comes up for you. It may not come up right away, but it'll come up. It'll come up. And sometimes it comes up while we're talking, like it did for me right now. Like earlier when we're talking, I was like, wait, I realized that I'd been doing that. I realized that I'd been kind of putting that blanket back on. It's safe to take off the blanket.
Yeah.
It's safe to take off the blanket of the wounded, traumatic healer. It's safe to take that off. And it's safe to bring
Yeah.
some more good stuff into your life.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And if that you're taking, right, this is a great time for y'all to also think about what is it that you're taking. I'm going to share as well. There's so much goodness in this episode. Oh, I'm just, body is already like sitting and digesting different pieces that we've had with this. One of the pieces that I would reflect on, really wanting to take with me, is probably this bit on actually a little bit of what you just shared of putting, when we put the blanket back on, we're holding the blanket, right? When we don't even realize that we've picked it up, which is in my language and in my words, what I would say when I am holding myself back from approaching what is scary. And when I think about what does that mean and what do I need, it means, Dina, you're not practicing courageously addressing this to move forward, right? Courage is really just the ability to approach something that's scary. It's saying, I know this is scary and I'm still going to approach it as opposed to avoid it, right? I'm not going to hide from it. I'm not going to avoid it. And so that's what's really sticking with me, is in those moments when I am like, my healing journey is hard and I don't want to do it anymore and I just want to pull this up, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, what we really need to say is maybe stop working on the healing part, let's start working on the courage part of just saying, I'm gonna just approach this, that's it. Or I'm just gonna be willing to see it, I'm not gonna hide from it, right? I'm just gonna have the courage to be with it. Sometimes that's enough until we're ready to move forward. That's what I think I'm gonna take with me.
I love
Thank
that you said
you
that, because
so much.
the effort is what leads to the results. It's like we're taking these moments, and as long as you're willing to do it, as long as you're willing to show up. Yeah.
That's the work, right? That willingness to show up. Gosh, when you said that earlier too about your, you could have pulled away from mom, you could have done a million, you could have dissociated, right? Was, I think, the word that you use. And I think that reality of like, just to show up and be is courageous. It takes courage to do that in the face of pain and in the face of loss and in the face of the unknown. It takes courage just to show up. You don't even have to do anything else. Sometimes enough. Oh, Francisca, thank you. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for sharing about your healing journey and the pathways to healing, and for really just diving into how we can really own our story and really belong to ourselves again, right? Thank you so much.
So welcome. I'm so honored.
Where can the audience find you? Give us some
Yes.
resources.
So earlier I was talking about thriving. So the name of my business is called Breathe, Connect, Thrive. I am here in Houston, Texas, but I also do services online. So I do conscious connected breathing online, and also tarot online. And I also do chakra balancing signature program that I offer online and in person. But in person, you can see me. I'm on the Easton in Houston, Texas, neighborhood I grew up in. I love this neighborhood. But yeah, you can find me by going to breatheconnectthrive.com. You can find me on Instagram at Breathe Connect Thrive. On YouTube, I have some free videos that you can watch there and do some breath work at home. But if you're not sure like what your healing style is, or how you can create a self-care routine that's best for you according to your unique personality, I do have a quiz. And so just go to the website and click on the quiz link.
I love a good quiz. Thank you so much for those resources. Of course, they are going to be in the show notes for everyone to, right, be able to quickly go there and get access to this. Breathe, connect, thrive. I love it. Thank you so much for your time, Francisca. It has been lovely to have you on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being willing to explore healing your humanity on Empowered Human. I hope you found at least one new way to transform your worldview from powered to empowered. If you took something from the show, please take a moment of your time and subscribe to Empowered Human. And if it really nourished you, leave us a review. Your feedback helps me understand what our community needs. Not to mention, it helps others discover the empowered human life. So keep this last bit in mind. All the visual goodies come with me on Instagram at Drama Therapist Nina. Stay up to date there on upcoming episodes, behind the scenes goodness, and reels dropping knowledge. Thank you again for being part of the empowered human community. Until next time, stay curious.